Everyone, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. And welcome everyone to this May 9th meeting of Budget, Capital, and Personnel. We have a quorum. Oh, there's Rich. Now we're missing Greg Mezey? There he is. All right, we're all here. Yay. Okay, thanks everyone. So I guess we'll start with our minutes approval. Can I get someone to move the minutes, please? Mike moves, Rich seconds. Any concerns or issues about the minutes? If not, let's please vote. Lee Shurtleff?
Yes, I wasn't here, but I'll vote yes.
Well, you're allowed. Thank you. Rich John?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezey?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's unanimous. We do have an addition to the agenda, resolution ID number 10921, which Katrina sent us earlier today. Authorization to accept funds, execute contract, create and budget adjustment, perinatal and infant community health collaborative grant, PICHC Health Department. So we'll be taking that up with the other resolutions. And there will be an executive session this afternoon. We have an issue to discuss relating to contract negotiations with the potential named employee. So that said, Katrina, did we have any comments from the public?
No, we haven't received any.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to a report from our county administrator, Lisa Holmes.
Thank you. I think I'll be brief today. Just to report out that our administration staff is working with the target set by the legislature at the May 3rd meeting and populating our budget software accordingly for departments to begin creating their 2023 budget requests. We will be having a budget launch meeting with county departments and agencies on Friday, May 20th. And then they'll have about a month and a half to submit their budgets back to us, due back on July 1st. We're also beginning a review of the departmental submissions of the PAR forms. That's the project approval requests for capital projects. So simultaneously, we're working on beginning the stages of work on the capital plan. And then finally, I've been invited at the annual meeting for the Human Services Coalition Forum. The county administrator is often invited to present a condensed version about the update for the 2023 budget process. I'll be attending that this Wednesday. Shauna as legislature chair and Dan Klein as chair of Health and Human Services will also be at that meeting Wednesday morning. That's it for me.
Well, that sounds like enough, Lisa.
Sure is. Yep.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns for Lisa? Well, that's good. Thank you. Next up, we have a report from Rick Snyder, our Director of Finance.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are updating you on the audit. We started it 1 week behind schedule, and so we are in full force with auditors here today on the field, auditing our books. We have probably 3 weeks of work to try to cram into 2 weeks, so it's going to be an awful busy next 2 weeks with the auditors here doing our county audit. And we have finished a couple of other audits that I updated you on earlier on the IDA and on the Tompkins task. And we recently finished the Health Insurance Consortium. So that has gone smoothly, and we're now just working on the county audit, which is the final one, along with the airport PFC or passenger facility charge audit that is due each year. So we're working on both of those at this time. The interviews are scheduled this week. I might have to leave this meeting early because our first interview starts later this afternoon for the vacancy in the finance department, which is the financial accounts payable clerk position. We have interviews scheduled for that all this week. And we also have interviews scheduled next week for our director of accounting services. So by the next time that I meet with you at this committee level, we'll probably have chosen those candidates, and hopefully we'll have them here working for Tompkins County real soon. And that's all I have for today. I'll take any questions you might have.
That's great news, Rick. Did you have a sufficient number of applicants for those positions to give lots of choice?
We had a very large and good turnout for the first one, the financial accounts payable clerk position. We had few that have committed to coming in for interviews for our manager position, which is the director of accounting services, but they are both very qualified, very high end. It's going to be tough to decide. I would like to hire them both. Because like I said, both of them have done this position exactly in neighboring counties close to us or higher level. So when you get a candidate that's working, has done that job for years or even at a higher level, we're very impressed. So I think we should have success on both fronts.
That's good to hear. From everything I'm reading, your success with getting good candidates is not the usual situation across the board. So good to hear. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or concerns for Rick? If you do, just shout out because you're very small on my screen and I can't see hands.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Rick. All right, next on our agenda is the report from Workforce Diversity and Inclusion. Henry has indicated that he can't be here today. I don't know if there's anyone else here who can report. I'm also not entirely sure whether WDIC actually met since our last meeting. So I did receive an email from Henry indicating that WDIC would like to institute a program of diversity training for legislators. So I actually forwarded that email to Amanda Champion because I think training is something that is handled by GO, but I expect we'll be hearing more about that in the future. So does anybody have any questions about WDIC? Okay. Is Ruby here? There she is. Hi, Ruby.
Hi, how's everybody?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. What does everybody else say?
Well, I think everybody's doing well. I just have a short report today. When Rick mentioned audits, we are completing the dependent eligibility audit in collaboration with the consortium. We are in the process of uploading the MOAs, the signed MOAs for the Juneteenth holiday for all unions. So that's good to go. We're also in the process of uploading the signed white collar contract 21 through 23 with the salary scales for the retro payments to be made on May 19th for white collar members. And I have a meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow with the managing principal for the vendor we've selected for the compensation study to go over our timelines. And once our timelines are set, then we'll be able to do that contract. I found out through Lisa that I don't need to do a resolution because the committee in its wisdom set aside money for the compensation study itself. So that's already in the budget. So we're good to go.
That's great, Ruby.
That's
Greg.
all I have.
Great, thank you. I see a hand from Greg.
Yeah, hi, Ruby.
Hi, Greg.
I had a quick question about the dependent eligibility audit. Is that the appropriate term?
Yes.
Is that because I got something in the mail and is that at random, or is that everyone gets a dependent eligibility? How does that process work?
That is everyone who's on our health insurance plan. And it's not done every year, it's done periodically. And it really is an audit to ensure that people who are not eligible to be on the plans as dependents, that means someone who's aged off. We're pretty good with that. Someone who may not have indicated that they're divorced and their spouses may still be on the plan. But it's really a fiscal responsibility to make sure that everyone's on the plan is eligible.
Okay,
So,
great.
and it's everybody's covered. No one's selected out.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the clarity.
You're welcome.
I follow up.
Thanks. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, Greg, I'm glad you brought that up because we saw communication from someone who we have a lot of respect for, questioning the survey and didn't we believe what they certified themselves? And for that person and for most of our people, I think a certification would be fine. But there are cases where folks have change in status or have people who do not qualify. In my personal legal practice, for example, I've done stepchild adoptions because not in our plan, but in other health insurance plans that do the same thing, where they found out that that child did not qualify anymore. So it's a serious thing. Who gets qualified? It's expensive for the people who have family plans if they have mixed families or other things. But I don't know how else to do it except to ask our employees to please comply with the audit requirements.
Thanks, Mike. I don't know if you all had an opportunity to see it, but I did send a response to the employee who expressed some concerns about this
No, I didn't see it.
earlier today. I did some research on this, and I happen to know 3 people who are on the consortium board. This is an industry best practice. It certainly aligns with the consortium's obligations to make the best possible use of the premiums it collects. My husband's actually on the consortium board, and he sent me a few articles about how this has, as a common industry practice over this past several years. And on average, nationwide, apparently, plans save 3 to 10% of their costs as a result of these audits and determining who is and is not eligible for coverage. It saves the plan money, it saves the employer's money, and ultimately it saves the employees who participate money in terms of their premiums. I wanted to urge everyone to understand that even though, yeah, it seems kind of upsetting that somebody's questioning what you're telling them, we have so many occasions in our society where we all have to verify or prove something because a few bad apples spoil it for everyone. And it really helps a lot if you don't take it personally. It's just another hoop we all have to jump through in order to get the benefit. And it's not in any way meant to reflect on whether we believe that our employees are honest and accurate in what they report. Greg, I see you got a hand again.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I mean, I agree, Deborah, with both things you and Mike say. Again, my personal situation, having a domestic partner, I'm always sort of sensitive to this, right? Because Ryan is not my roommate, right? We live as essentially married. We're going to be married in June. So I just raise it just from personal perspective, knowing that, you know, others may feel like this. And I think, you know, Ruby, I only asked the question on process so that it's out there. I just went back and looked at the communication and, you know, I think just clarifying maybe a little bit more that everybody goes through this, or, you know, this is being sent to all people. It was just helpful, right? Because I've personally been in situations where, you know, I had a few more hoops or questions to jump through in previous employers. So I am always sensitive to that. And I do respect people for raising those questions if there's, you know, a need for understanding. And I think it's healthy to have this type of conversation so that it's more widely understood why it is that we do this. I just think the communication maybe could be a touch clearer, that it's not just you, or it's not just a few, you know, groups. It's, you know, everybody is sort of going through this, and it's something we really regularly do. But that was my only piece, and I appreciate Ruby for clarifying. I have no issues, but I do, since it was brought up, I'm glad that we spent a few minutes talking about it in depth. Thanks for going through and getting more information, because that was really helpful to see, you know, that it's, you know, industry practice.
Yeah, it's just like all of us having to take our shoes off at the airport because some idiot put explosives in their shoe. Anyway, do we have any other questions for Ruby? Okay, I don't see any, so we will move on to our resolutions. Let's see, the first one is contingency fund request toward reimagining the workplace employment education series, ID number 10893. Can I get a motion on that? I can't see, your hands are really little. Okay, Greg moves, and Rich is waving a second, so thank you. Please bear in mind, everybody, that the thing we're voting on is the resolution as it was revised and adopted by PDEC. Does everyone have that? Okay, great. Jackie, do you want to speak to this and answer any questions?
Sure. I do have a small or brief PowerPoint if folks would like to have a little bit more information about the employment education series itself, kind of the contents. But if that doesn't seem necessary, I'm glad to answer questions just based on the resolution you have in front of you.
Committee members, what's your pleasure regarding the PowerPoint?
I just as soon see it. I have questions about the program.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Glad to do that. I will do a screen share. Okay. You all can see my screen, okay? Okay, wonderful. So as you see from the resolution, proposed resolution, the title of this educational series is called Reimagining the Workplace. So the basic concept is that for many, many years, we have prepared a lot of educational material to help job seekers be ready for the employment realm, be ready to pursue employment. But really on the employer side of things, it's kind of been an assumed thing that employers were ready and prepared to support job seekers in being successful in the workplace. And what we've found throughout the pandemic is that the street that we're walking as far as employees and employers has really shifted. So for many, many years, job seekers would have to do quite a bit to be prepared to kind of sell their skills to employers. And we've seen a big shift in that, in the employment realm. I see it comparable to the housing market. You know, over years, the housing market ebbs and flows, and sometimes it kind of rolls in the favor of buyers, and other times it rolls in the favor of sellers. And I think for the first time in many, many years, we're seeing that kind of a shift in the employment realm, where for so long, it really rolled in the favor of employers, and job seekers had to do whatever they could to demonstrate their preparedness for employment. And now we're seeing things shift where employers are really having to demonstrate for job seekers that they're prepared to have a healthy workplace culture, that they're prepared to meet the needs and voices of the job seekers. And so that's what this employment education series is really all about. So you can see the topics that are covered, and I'll briefly just talk a little bit about who the consultants and trainers are that we have for each of these themes or topic areas. So the LGBTQ+ series will be facilitated by Dawn Shedrick, who is a licensed social worker and a lecturer at Columbia University, as well as a trainer and consultant with Gentex Consulting. So the idea with that particular series, it's really about helping to ensure an inclusive workplace and supportive and affirming workplace for anyone who identifies in the LGBTQ+ community. So this is about policy, procedure, ways in which people need to be supported and affirmed in the workplace in order to feel safe and like the culture is welcoming to them and inclusive of them. Milo Primo is the consultant we'd be working with, founder and CEO of Just Roots Consulting, who is also a civil rights attorney. He'll be focusing on power and privilege in the workplace, uprooting implicit bias, addressing a white dominant culture, while also trying to balance with an equitable workplace, and then kind of reimagining what the workplace might look like when we're really truly addressing racial equity. There's a re-entry series, so supporting individuals who are going through the re-entry process following incarceration or experience exposure in the justice system. Liz Justison, who was a former defense attorney and now works with the Legal Aid Society of Suffolk County. She'll be focusing on after the conviction, so what people who are going through the re-entry process face following a conviction. Providing second chances, so really supporting employers in how they can meet some of the needs of individuals who are going through the re-entry process and help support them in the workplace, whether it's helping to ensure that they can attend appointments or helping them to meet address other systemic barriers that they may be facing as they go through the re-entry process, and then again, breaking those barriers. Locally, we're tapping into the Workers' Rights Center. They will be facilitating training on fair and responsible investigations when there are internal complaints, how to file a workplace complaint, living wage versus poverty wage, and affirming practices in workplaces, and then also addressing discrimination and harassment relative to workers' rights. Jesse Cohen-Filippic, who is also another local person who's a licensed psychologist and works with Reach Medical as well as Ithaca College. She'll be facilitating a mental health series focused on trauma-informed practices. So much of what we know about people who have navigated different traumatic experiences in their lives, that they are often dealing with them in every facet of what they do, whether we're talking about in education or in the workplace. And so this series is intended to help employers know and understand what some of the barriers might be that people are facing, particularly people going through different mental health challenges. We know that as a result of the pandemic, folks' experiences with mental health have dramatically increased. And so it's a very common thing that people are also dealing with mental health challenges while they're in the workplace where they spend a lot of their time. So also addressing harm reduction, compassion, and compassion fatigue. We'll also be partnering with Yang Tan Institute and potentially with Finger Lakes Independence Center to address disability etiquette and disclosure, understanding and implementing workplace accommodations. We know that a tremendous amount of effort was made during the pandemic to address all different types of workplace accommodations to help people be able to do the work that they needed to do, whether in an office or in a retail setting or from home throughout the pandemic, and that those kinds of accommodations continue. And we want to make sure that employers have a good grasp of other types of accommodations that might be necessary to help individuals who have different types of disabilities to be successful in the workplace. And then lastly, we would be wrapping up with panel discussions that involve employers as well as employees, fostering healthy discussions about workplace conditions, and really citing specific examples of ways in which employers and employees can work together to have a successful experience. What we know is that if we can help employers to better prepare themselves for recruiting and hiring individuals coming from marginalized populations, individuals who have faced different types of systemic barriers, that if we can provide this kind of training, we think that we can also help employers be better prepared to retain those same employees in the long haul. And that's, of course, a win-win on both sides for employers and employees. Any questions?
Thank you for presenting that.
Sure, you're welcome.
I'll just jump in here. I always knew your office is under different naming, and Office of Employment and Training it appears that you've expanded the scope from workforce development to workplace development.
Perhaps we're partnering certainly with the local workforce development board to facilitate kind of the frontline version of the work that we do. But so it's Office of Employment and Training as well as the Career Center. So we do have a couple of different names in case there's any confusion on that front, just clarifying Career Center and Office of Employment and Training.
And I think maybe the second whereas, does that outline your target audience for this series? Nonprofit, for-profit, government employers, service providers, job seekers. It sounds as though you're more geared toward the employer and preparing them for what they're steps.
Yeah, it is. And thank you for asking that question. So really, yes, it's inclusive of everyone, because we think that it's particularly important that if we're putting out language that we're wanting employers to understand and grasp, that we also want job seekers themselves or employees to understand that same language. So we're having everyone kind of speaking the same language. We think that's particularly important, but indeed, yes, this is targeting employers. The hope is that in the long term, so we're proposing it as a pilot project. The idea in the long term is that we're potentially putting it out as a certification for employers. We are working with Cornell ILR School right now, exploring the research that might be necessary in order to collect the data and determine, the success of this initial pilot, and also helping us to make sure that we can capture what we might need to change to make it a more successful educational series for employers and for everyone involved over the long haul. So.
And might a certification be a prerequisite for funding for an organization, or would that be more of a benefit in the process of applying for workforce dollars?
I think that's a good question. I think there's always potential that either employers or organizations might reference that certification to kind of hold value for their investment in their workplace, in the culture of their workplace. But I think also what we're really wanting to do is help, one of the things that we hear regularly from employers is about their challenges in hiring and retaining staff. And we think that a certification can help employers demonstrate that they already on the front end are invested in a healthy culture and healthy workplace. And that will send messages to job seekers who are pursuing employment. So if they see that certification, it potentially helps them recruit and retain staff.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Those are good questions, Lee. Thank you. And for your answers, Jackie. Does anybody else have a question? Rick?
I just have a comment. I think this looks good, Jackie. I'm looking forward to see how the rollout goes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, anyone else? If not, are we ready to vote? Lee,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. I think this is a worthy program, and I look forward to seeing what comes of it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. We'll be sure to follow up.
Okay, great. Okay, our next resolution, appropriation from Contingent Fund, County Attorney's Office, ID 10878. I don't know if there's someone here from the County Attorney's Office or if Lisa wants to address this, but I guess first I need a motion. I see Rich's hand. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mike. All right. Lisa or whomever.
I believe that this is a request for contingent funds for the time period in which Jonathan and Bill overlapped in December of 2021.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought it was. But does anybody have any questions for Lisa?
Just a question on past practice. We typically have an overlap of a month or so with most of our department heads, don't we?
When possible. It's not always possible. Yes.
Well, this is a pretty complex position.
Yeah.
If I could, it was explained to us at the GO committee, and Bill Troy was there, and really this was because we actually had two county attorneys. It wasn't just an overlap.
Okay, anything else? All right, are we ready to vote? Lee,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you, everybody. Okay, then we've got amend capital program, Cortland Street Bridge Replacement, BIN 2263090, Town of Groton, Doc ID 10882. Could someone please move that?
I'd be happy to move that one.
Thanks, Lee.
Second.
Thank you. Rich, this seems pretty self-explanatory, but does anyone have any questions about this? If not, I'd like to just move on to vote on it. Lee,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you. The next resolution is appropriation from contingent fund and budget adjustment weights and measures. Doc ID 10870. Could someone move that, please? Thank
Second.
you. Okay, Katrina, do you know who moved and seconded? Because
I have Mike Lane moving it and Rich John seconded.
okay, thank you. I just have one question about this. It says in the first whereas that budget adjustments exceeding $5,000 require legislative approval. And yet this one doesn't exceed $5,000. So I just wondered why that was in there at all.
Deborah, Aaron is here with us. You know, if you see him.
Okay, Aaron, is there anything about this you need to address or?
Yeah, because I was around somebody that was a COVID positive patient. They informed me of it. And so I took the time off for safety precautions. And when I brought this up with finance, I was instructed to appropriate this funding from the contingent fund to rebalance out the salary and fringe lines in my budget.
Okay, and I guess that first whereas is just a boilerplate?
I can address that for you, Deborah. That first one is boilerplate, but the main reason it comes in the form of resolution, anything coming from the contingent fund, which is a legislator's privy, your little contingent fund pot, that has to go to the ledge.
Well, then I might want to suggest that, and I assume that's pursuant to the same administrative policy manual? Chris?
Yes, anything that comes from contingent fund must come before the ledge.
So could I just propose an amendment that said pursuant to the administrative policy manual, any allocation from the contingent fund must be approved by the legislature?
I'd consider that friendly.
Thank you. It just seems like it makes more sense if we have a whereas that reflects why we're actually approving it.
Yeah. They should probably both be in there, but that's the reason why it goes through committee and onto the ledge, is primarily because it comes from contingent fund.
Okay, great. Katrina, did you get that?
Yes, I did. Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you. Okay.
Deborah,
Yes.
I would suggest, why don't we say both?
I just find it confusing because it doesn't exceed $5,000.
Yeah, just as a general statement, it's more educational to the legislators to understand it. Because it's going to
Well,
be,
that's fair. Okay, so we'll add a second whereas that says and whereas pursuant to the administrative policy manual.
why don't we just say, put it in the same and say, drawn from the contingent fund and or exceeding $5,000.
That's even better, Rich. Thank you. You must be a lawyer.
Yeah, some days.
Okay. So do you want to just read that out for Katrina's benefit?
Or budget adjustments drawn from the contingent fund and or exceeding $5,000 require legislative approval.
Thank you.
I got that.
Okay, we ready to vote? Lee,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you all. Okay, Roxanne, I know that you're waiting and this may be kind of an extended discussion on your resolution because it's kind of complicated. So I wanted to put the resolution that we added to the agenda, ID 10921, authorization to accept funds, execute contract, create positions, and budget adjustment, perinatal and infant community health collaborative grant, health department on the agenda first, because Frank's here and this one is budget neutral, I think. So could I get a motion for that one, please? Greg moves. Somebody wave out there and second it, please. Lee seconds it. Thank you. Yeah, so Frank, this one looks like it's budget neutral, but you want to just give us a quick review?
Yes, it is budget neutral. First, thank you for adding it to the agenda. Our community health services team put together a grant application to the state for what amounts to $255,000 for each year for 5 years to expand our community health worker program. And the focus of these community health workers will be to engage families that are eligible for the many maternal and child health programs, not only at the health department, but within our community partners as well. So one of the exciting things about this grant is that it's allowing us to work with our community partners to provide those maternal and child health services to figure out how we can reach populations that we have not traditionally reached. And that is a core function of this grant, is reaching minority populations and those with health inequities in our community.
Sounds great. Does anybody have any questions for Frank?
I think you just mentioned it's budget neutral. Just one question. You're creating new positions in your department, Frank. And at the end of 5 years, if the funding weren't there, to continue those would necessitate at least a target change or something within your working budget. Is that right?
If we were to continue the program and the grant was not continued, then yes, we'd have to have some discussion about whether we continue, and if so, how we might pay for it.
Okay, thanks.
Good point, Lee. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, let's vote. Lee,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Congratulations, Frank, and I hope that this program really improves the services that are available for these communities.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Now, next we have resolution, establishment of an off-airport automobile rental company permit, Ithaca Tompkins International Airport, ID 10837. Would somebody please move that?
I'll move it.
And Greg seconds. Thank you. Okay, Roxanne, take it away.
All right. So this, recently our rental car company contracts are due to expire. So we went out for a bid. We received bids from actually the current companies that we already have here. So we're doing a contract with them for the next 5 years. We also, upon talking to our financial advisors, Recondo, that we use quite frequently, we are allowed to charge off-airport rental car companies a fee because they're coming to the airport, they're picking up passengers, they're using the facility, they're driving on the roadways. So we're allowed to charge them as well. So we are putting this together. They would, have to sign a contract as well. They would go through insurance and, we would have all the requirements. Bill Troy would go through all of that. But this will allow us to collect an 8% surcharge on any airport passengers, as well as the $3 per travel day, transaction day, the consolidated fee charge that we would be able to collect. This will help. The CFC charge helps us maintain the airport relating to rental cars. It's set up in a separate account that Rick set up. So additional funds would be going in there, would allow us to replace the car wash that we currently have that needs to be replaced, that's old, with something new, more energy efficient that the rental car companies use. And the percentage, is 8%, whereas the two companies that we currently have, actually 3 companies, they pay a 10% commission on all of their revenue that they generate from the airport. So they pay us 10% on all of their revenue, whereas the other company would pay 8%. So it's a little bit reduced because they're not on the airport. They did have an opportunity to bid. This company did not. They chose not to. But this is something that is done across the country. It helps our non-airline revenue, as you all know, is something, one of the main focuses of my new position as the director. How can we sustain this airport? How can we continue moving forward, not just on our airline revenue, but our non-airline revenue? So this will be just another way to generate additional revenue for the airport that we need.
Okay, thank you. I want to be sure I understand what an off-airport rental company does exactly. So would that be somebody who sends a shuttle up to the airport to pick up passengers to take them to their rental car?
So it would be a rental car company that's not located at the airport. So it wouldn't be like your hotel shuttles or anything like that. That's something completely different. So it would be any rental car companies, which there is one in Tompkins County that's not located at the airport.
But it only applies to the extent that they actually pick up a passenger at the airport, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And it would be, and it would be hard. It wouldn't be something that we could necessarily definitively tell. If they are picking them up, we don't have a way to know that, Enterprise was here. But it's on an honor basis where a lot of the things are, they would track that and then send us the check. We could audit that if we determine that, we could have it audited, at any time, their numbers, their information. But this is something that's done, at many airports.
So what's a transaction day?
Every day. So every day that you pay the fee for the rental car. So it's a $3 per day transaction day. It's something we affected in 2020. And as a revenue generator, and it's actually helped get us a pot of money that we can do the upgrades that we need without having to, take it out of our operating budget. We have an account that we can use to upgrade the areas that are necessary, the parking, any paving for the rental car companies. We're able to use this fund to cover those fees.
Okay. Rich, I saw you had a hand.
Yeah, I had two questions. One is, I'm curious about enforceability. It doesn't seem like this is enforceable. And also you mentioned a car wash. Would the off-site car rental companies have access to be able to use that?
That would be something that I would have to look through all of the documentation that I've gotten as we're putting together the agreement. We haven't moved to put the agreement together. We're just working on the permit to get us to allow this. And then we'll put the permit together and get it signed with the rental car company. Enforcing it will be something that's tricky. Again, it's based on, somebody just indicating, and people do see, so we kind of do know that there are a lot of times that there are other rental car companies coming up here, the other rental car company, but it's not something that we can necessarily enforce, but it's just something that they would keep track of so that, I don't think, they would be falsifying their books if they didn't. And if they sign an agreement, with the county, which they would have to do for this off airport fee.
Yeah, I guess my question more specifically is why would a off-site company sign this agreement? Why wouldn't they just send their shuttle to pick up passengers getting off planes?
That's what they've been doing. And this is just something that's, that they've done, and I believe this company has done it too across the country. It's something that they're used to. It's a larger rental car company that they know of. And it's something that it's because they're using the facility, they're gaining revenue, and it's just something that's done. It's a natural, it's a process that's used by many airports.
Okay. I think Mike has a question.
More of a comment. I should think if I was one of the three companies that were paying the fees at the airport itself, I would be very uncomfortable if there were rental car agencies that could come up and not have to pay anything to do the same thing that we're doing, if I'm one of them.
And that's something that came up as a reason too, that the off airport company can undercut the
Right.
fees by a lot. So that was something to make it more fair and equitable across the board for all the rental car companies within Tompkins County. That everybody gets a fair shot, a fair chance of, earning the revenue from the airport passengers. So that's why this was another reason, it just covers the fair and equity portion of it too, for all of the rental car companies.
It seems very important to me. Thank you.
Thanks.
Greg?
Yeah, my question, hi Roxanne, is
Hi.
about, are these fees listed like sales tax would be or something like that typically to the customer? Or is it something that comes out on the backside that the company is just sort of remitting? Or does the customer see these sort of fee, charge, tax, whatever,
Sure.
Listed?
So the only fee really associated with that would be the $3, and that is made known to the customer. And that was something we did a resolution for back in 2020. I think there was a public hearing on that as well, just letting people know and passengers know. So I believe it is listed on their agreement. I haven't seen a copy of their agreement, but it's something I think that's noted to them as well when they rent a car. That's the $3 CFC charge.
Okay. But then the 8% is you're essentially taking 8% of their gross and remitting that back. That's not listed.
Yeah, they
Correct. So the
don't
8%, yeah, the 8% is off airport, 10% is the on airport rental car companies. They pay us 10% of their gross, and they don't see that. So that's just whatever they take in. Then we get a check cut for 10%, or there's a minimal amount too, which during the pandemic they hit quite a bit. It was a minimum fee or 10%, whichever's greater.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
And do you have one last question. Do you have any idea how much revenue, or do you anticipate how much this agreement will be valued at, this 8%?
I do not. Because I'm not sure what their volume looks like at this time. And I'm sure that's something we will probably request too, is kind of what some background information on what they've done in the past as far as financials, as we're looking at, signing the agreement with them. And then, kind of go from there. I know, like we usually receive about on airport about 300,000 per year. Obviously during the pandemic, we were down to about 120 to 140 in just commissions, not the rental and not the CFC. But in 2021, we were back up. So it could be a decent revenue generator for us. Fingers crossed.
All right. Well, great idea. Thank you.
Yep.
So did you get complaints from the on-airport car companies about this?
We have, yeah, in the past, and when we did the request for proposals, we'd initially, so Avis and Budget have always operated together kind of under one agreement. And then we had Barrett Drive Yourself, which is from Hertz. And so they were like the two. So we, worked through everything and got, so there was additional counter space so we could, have a third one thinking, because, the enterprise had reached out to us quite frequently, wanting to be on airport. We were trying to do what we could, thought, okay. And then when they didn't bid, we were shocked. But Avis and Budget, yeah, we were like, are you kidding? We went through rearranging all the parking spots, but Avis and Budget bid as separate entities. So we're actually still going to have the 3 counters full up here. Avis will have one, Budget will have one, and then Hertz will have the other. We've separated that out. So it'll be additional rental revenue for the counter space for the that area. And we'll have the off-airport revenue.
From Enterprise, yeah.
From Enterprise, yep.
Can I ask a question about this, the wording of just one word in this resolution? On packet page 20, the 5th complete whereas, line 22, it says the county has determined that continuing the imposition of a fair and reasonable percentage fee on off-airport automobile rental companies. Well, we're not continuing it. Isn't this something new?
It's new, yep.
So wouldn't it be more accurate to say the county has determined that imposing a fair and reasonable percentage fee?
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay. Well, then I offer that as an amendment to this. Is that friendly?
It is to me.
It's friendly to me.
Okay.
Why can't you just say, whereas the county has determined that the imposition of a fair and reasonable fee?
That's fine too.
Works for me if that works for Mike.
Okay. All right. So that's the way it's going to read, because continuing word really threw me. All right. Are we ready to vote on this?
Sorry, Deborah, could we read the whole amendment again?
The county has determined that the imposition of a fair and reasonable percentage fee on off-airport automobile rental companies will further the county's legitimate interests.
Thank you.
Okay. And I assume our wonderful Katrina has that.
I got that.
Okay. We ready to vote? Lee,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, Roxanne, go get them.
Great, thanks, guys.
Okay. All right. Next resolution, authorizing a public hearing on proposed local law number blank of 2022, a local law overriding tax levy limit for 2023, ID 10909. Can I get a motion, please?
I move.
Thank you, Rich. Second, Mike, thank you. Any discussion on this? Just bear in mind that this is something we do every year. Lee.
Yes, yeah, I am bearing that in mind, Deborah. It's procedural. I know you schedule this every year. And as I did mention at the last meeting, that 6 months is a lifetime in the development of a budget. I don't know. I'll vote to put this out there, but I don't know in the end that I would ever support a tax override in the end.
Well, you're not committing yourself to that. None of us are.
Understood.
I think we rarely, if ever, do this. I think we did it in 2020. Mike might remember, because that was the year we got hit really badly.
May have been before that.
Say what?
I'm thinking maybe it was before that we did it.
No, I thought it was 2020, but in any event, it's
Right.
security. And remember, this resolution just sets the public hearing. Greg?
Yeah, so I guess my question is more for the next, because for the next one, so I'll wait.
Okay. Anything else? All right, Lee,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you. Okay, now we're down to the nitty gritty of really changing the law. Okay, adoption of local law number blank of 2022, a local law overriding tax levy limit for 2023, ID 10908. Can I get a motion on that, please?
Yes.
Mike moves. Can I get a second? Thank you, Rich. Okay, now, Greg, we'll take your question.
Yeah, is this, I know that this is sort of become standard practice in our county. Is this for those that have had more experience with this or have seen this in other counties? Is this something that's pretty standard practice for legislatures to undergo? Is this, or sort of the background on how this sort of came to be would be helpful?
Mike, you want to address that?
I think a lot of them do it, Greg, and certainly a lot of the towns and villages do it as well. Dryden Town usually does it. Dryden Village usually does it. I assume Freeville does. I'm not positive on that. And it's always, you have to have this local law in place if you want to ever be able to override the tax levy cap. And then if you don't want to do that, later on in the year, we repeal this because we don't need it anymore. And that's what normally happens.
Rich?
Yeah, just for the benefit of our very large public that I'm sure is watching our Budget and Financial Personnel Committee meeting. This is really a bureaucratic maneuver or thing we need to do because of the way New York State set up its tax cap. Typically, we do work within the state tax cap and we do repeal this, but if we don't do it now, we lose the ability to plan as we want to plan.
Yeah, I know. My experience with the Village of Lansing is that we do this every year and we never exceed the tax cap. It's just, you want to keep your options open because you never know what you're going to get hit with 6 months down the road.
Is there a timeline on this as to when it has to be in place? Or could it go right up to the time of voting on the budget?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. Lisa, do you have any idea?
When the local law needs to be in place?
Yes.
I believe it could be as late as that, but at that point, I think we are in the midst of all of the budget meetings, that adding this to the plate, then it's just easier to get off the plate now.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Mike?
I wanted to if you'll indulge me, a quick little story here. The first year of the tax cap, we've traditionally done it very early, Lee. But the answer to your question is yes, you could do it later, but we don't want to get tripped up on it. There's a small town in Cortland County. It's called the town of Lapeer. And they were trying very hard to do what they were supposed to do. They had a new building, not an expensive building, but a new building for their highway equipment in their budget. And they went ahead and adopted their budget. and had the money in there for this building. Well, the state came along and said to them after that, you've exceeded the levy. And poor town of Lapeer said, but we thought it was the tax rate. And so they got tripped up on that. And I felt very badly. They weren't able to build their building that year because of that. So you have to be careful with these kind of things. And it was a whole process set up by the state, and we have to jump through their hoops.
Yeah, it's the distinction between the tax rate and the tax levy is something that's frequently confused by the general public.
That's true. And you'll see a lot of municipalities will talk about, oh, we've lowered the tax rate, or we haven't raised the tax rate. But if you look at the real spending, it's the levy. And that's why in our case, and I think it's a good thing, we always talk about levy.
Thank you, Mike. Lee, did you have another question?
Just another one, procedural on the resolved 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth paragraph. And just calling this out that to override the tax levy limit requires adoption by 60% of the legislature. So when it goes to the legislature, we've got to have 9 votes to make that 60%. But I'm assuming by passing this at an upcoming meeting, that 60% is paved, and if we exceed it in the budget process in October and November, the authorization's already in place to go ahead. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
We wouldn't be taking a vote and looking for 60% on the final budget vote, that 60%.
No, we would just have to pass the budget.
Right. So that leaves a latitude in what we do moving ahead. Just observation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we ready to vote? Lee?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And I appreciate that Lee has faith in the rest of us. Okay. Now we need to have an executive session to discuss.
Deborah, may I make a brief report about TC3?
Oh, sure, Mike.
I just want to report that this morning we had the first capital or 2 county and TC3 meeting of legislators and TC3 about their capital program.
Cool.
This is going to be a regularly every month we're going to meet. And we had a tour of the campus, looking at some of the exterior improvements that are going to be needed. We had discussion about their $3 million grant, which is going to let them improve their labs, electrical labs and chemistry and physics and things for the nursing program. I think this is really a good thing. We have 2, Randy Brown volunteered. He's got good background here in facilities. And George Wagner, head of their budget committee in Cortland, and Chris Newell, former financial person from Farm Credit, are the 2 legislators from Cortland. And I think this will help, particularly Cortland, understand what's going on and how hard TC3 works with the dollars that are involved. I won't go into all of it, but I want you to know that process is starting, and I'm very optimistic about it.
Thanks, Mike. We're really grateful that you and Randy volunteered to participate in that effort. Okay, now we need to go into executive session to discuss contract negotiations with the potential or a named potential county employee. So if I could get a motion to that effect, please. Greg, thank you. Second. Somebody wave. Thank you, Lee. Okay. So we need to vote on that, I guess. Lee?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So I think at this point, we just need Lisa and Ruby. If the other folks want to leave, they may. Bye. And thank you all.
Deborah, can you just give us a minute to make sure that we've stopped the recording?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, who's Robert Henry?
Or media production specialist.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. So is the recording stopped now?